7, I knew my full name and I knew the city I lived in.
But there was a lot of times where you had that information in your brain, but you're 7. It's not easily retrieved. And think about what little kids that get lost in the mall are like. I mean, we all hear these stories, and this kid who's 7 gets lost in the mall, and they say, "What's your name?" "I don't know." "What's your mom's name?" "I don't know." "Where do you live?" "I don't know," because they're panicked, and it just kind of it shuts that kind of cognizant recall down.
Well, yeah, but sooner or later, you can only flood your body with adrenaline for so long, and then you come down off of that, and you sort of gather your wits together. Even a 7-year-old, I think, sooner or later would calm down and assess the situation and realize that panicking is not really helping, and that what he needs to do is get some useful information to these people that he's talking to on the radio.
You're assigning a lot of adult thought to a 7-year-old brain. I have hung around 7-year-olds who are completely and totally irrational, and it's only because of the fact that they're 7.
Yeah.
They don't think about that. They get caught in flights of fantasy and panic, and they just get all kinds of worked up. And it's easy, especially if dad is lying next to you and you don't know what's wrong with dad. That's going to continually cause panic. Mm-hmm. But I know 7-year-olds, they're just not real good with a lot of that details because they're 7.
Yeah, the other thing about 7-year-olds is they get often super cranky and panicked when they get tired. Mm-hmm. And if you're, steaming alive in a car with no food or water.
Nicest way to put this.
Yeah. I mean, really, if and you're panicking because your dad's there and you can't get out and you're tired and you're thirsty and people are like yelling all different things to you and people are like, everybody's just asking you questions. I can understand how he would be a little freaked out. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I just want my mommy. I just, yeah.
It's very understandable.
I think so.
So here's I don't want to get off topic too much, but I do just want to try and understand something, because Joe, you seem to understand it better than I do. Is
what's that?
If we're going to flip back to how so many people heard this, and maybe this was a trolling situation.
Yeah.
So how does you gave kind of a basic explanation, but how does this skipping thing really happen? Because I couldn't get a good handle on it.
Yeah, now the way it works is, and I'm not a scientist, I don't understand it completely, but essentially it's...
We know you're not a scientist. Yeah, you always talk about the chupacabra.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, chupacabra's real. So anyway, the ionosphere, which is, about 53 miles up to about 260 miles on the surface of the Earth.
Uh-huh.
And it's called the ionosphere because it's filled with ions, and apparently, particularly when the sun is going through periods of high sunspot activity, there's a lot of coronal flares and things like that. It sends a lot of ionized particles towards the Earth, and they collect in the ionosphere, and they charge it in a certain way that makes it conducive. Essentially, radio waves traveling up from the surface at, say, a 45-degree angle are refracted and bent around, down, and from the radio signal, it re-radiates downward back to the surface. And
so basically recharges it?
Apparently that can happen, yeah. But in other cases, it just basically goes up, is refracted back downwards, bounces off the ground, goes up, is refracted back downwards. And so there have been cases of people skipping like halfway around the world, people in the U.S. talking to people in Australia on CBs. But I'm going to say most of the people that do that, usually they're using home-based stations. And a lot of people, even though you're not supposed to operate over 4 watts on a CB, you can actually get amplifiers and supercharge your CB. And so you're a lot more likely to be able to do skipping and actually be heard, for hundreds and hundreds of miles away. Because your average CB is very limited line of sight range.
Okay. So you just brought up a very good point, which suddenly makes me doubt this whole story.
Okay.
Absolutely valid point that I've never seen anywhere. You said you've got to have an antenna.
Yeah, which this kid didn't have.
Because the truck is upside down.
Yeah,
If the truck is upside down, the antenna is likely broke.
Yeah.
Or partially buried.
Well, thanks for stealing my thunder.
And I hadn't even thought about that.
I was going to make.
I hadn't even thought about that until you said the booster tower.
Yeah. So the next possibility after that. So obviously, if it's an in-dash radio, if it's mounted inside the truck, the radio is going to be completely useless.
Right.
But there's also handheld CBs.
Sure.
But that wouldn't work either because the kid's in a metal box. Steel reflects radio waves.
Mm-hmm.
So the only place that those radio waves are going to be able to get out through is maybe through the windshield, possibly, if that's not all covered with dirt and blocked. The kid was either in a ditch or in a ravine, depending on what version. So
Or outside with a skinned knee.
yeah, so a handheld CB is like, the street lights. There's a handheld walkie-talkie kind of CB, which under ideal conditions, say you're on a mountaintop and the person you're talking to is on a mountaintop 5 miles away, that handheld might make it the whole 5 miles to the listener. But obviously, this was less than optimal conditions for Larry here. So it's really unlikely to me that Larry even existed. This is why I don't believe this story, because there's no way he could have used either kind of CB to contact anybody. Not unless they were maybe a couple hundred yards away.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's
So,
a really good point, actually.
Yeah, so Larry didn't exist.
Did you come across, there was some snippet, as you said, in the snippet section. There's a snippet in one of the stories that I read about somebody tracking down a kid with a handheld radio who was CB that was goofing around. Did
I heard
either of you
about
see that?
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, it was 2 kids
Yeah.
that were goofing.
And so I wonder if that's maybe where it came from. But how the heck did they triangulate this? That's what I still don't get.
I don't get it either.
I'm not sure.
You know,
That's,
the one person who came forward and said, "Oh, no, that was me," was this middle-aged dude in the Midwest, and he tried to prove that he had been the prankster by doing Larry's voice for everyone, and apparently it was just hilariously inaccurate. That it was clearly like just a Midwestern dude trying to do like a scared 7-year-old voice that just nobody really seemed to believe it. And he was claiming to have been broadcasting from the Midwest. And, you know, again, I don't know how they triangulated it. I don't know if there's the actual ability to triangulate it, but I kind of wonder if perhaps there is something lost in the history of this, if Larry didn't say, "Oh, it was desert when we flipped over," or if, they were able to somehow track something. I don't know how they do that.
I don't know either. It could have been somebody actually driving around the area in a car with a boosted CB, maybe.
But they would have had to have been in the area, is my feeling. It's not that, somebody in the Midwest could have been doing this unless they had been, continually skipping to near Albuquerque.
Yeah, if they're actually skipping, I don't really see how you can triangulate that.
No.
It's somebody within line of sight, so somebody reasonably close by. So you have several CB operators, and they all pick up the same transmission, and they all see the signal strength of that transmission. Most radios, especially home ones, have little dials and knobs and stuff.
Yeah, little
So
ham radios.
Yeah, so if you see the signal strength, and the signal strength for that thing from several different locations around it, you can sort of probably get a rough idea of where it originated from.
And I think that's maybe because I was rereading the piece from, is it the New York Times?
Yeah.
New York Times, and it was talking about the monitoring of the transmission.
Yeah.
And there's some stuff in there that leads me to believe that they were using multiple listening points to try and figure out it's stronger here, it's weaker here, that kind of
So
accurate pinpointing of what you had at the time.
Yeah.
So that seems the only way I can see it plausibly that they could track it down.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So it's probably somebody in a car or a truck in the area broadcasting this thing, and that's not counting all the other copycats that are out there jumping in.
Sure. Yeah.
So that would be my best guess.
Okay. Well, you've totally ruined my best theory.
What was
It's
your
super
best theory?
depressing and sad.
Oh, that he was real and he died horribly out in the desert.
Yeah, that he was real, and that like the first, maybe days worth of transmissions were actually him, and then just he died. And
How is that the best theory?
I said that was my theory.
Oh, okay.
Did I say best?
You said the best theory.
right,
At least
that's
I
an
thought
uplifting
you
theory,
said the
yeah.
best
Oh, my
theory.
best. It's my best theory.
Okay.
I apologize. I didn't mean for it to be like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was
it's
like,
a
you creepazoid.
fun, awesome theory. Yeah.
Well,
No.
now, but the other reason I think this was a hoax is it's been 41 years since this happened. They would have found the truck by now. Somebody would have stumbled across that thing, some hikers or somebody.
Yeah, the interesting thing was that I read reports, and in the New York Times article, it even mentions 3 pilots report sighting truck in Red Rock Canyon area. And there were other reports that some people saw an overturned truck in that kind of area, but there was never any follow up on that. So.
But the thing about it is they flip the truck and it goes into a ditch. Well, what's always right next to a ditch? A road.
Right.
A road that people are going to be driving up and down. In 41 years, there's got to have been at least a few people who've driven up and down that road and would have probably noticed a flipped over pickup truck.
Actually, I'll counter that.
Yeah.
If you go into a ditch or a ravine, even if it's near...
The ravine could be a different story.
Well,
if it's a ravine.
What is a ditch to you? Is that 3 feet deep or is that 10 feet deep? Because I've seen a lot of quote unquote ditches that were actually 10 feet deep or something next to the side of a road, and they funnel a bunch of water through. And that winter there's a flood through. So we're talking Nevada or Arizona, right?
New Mexico.
New Mexico, excuse me. So that area is prone to flash flooding. So if you get a big swell of water that comes through, it's very possible that could have been buried in that first winter. One giant wash buries it under a bunch of crap, and yeah, you're right. It should have been found by now, but who knows how far it could have traveled?
Well, I guess I also, my other argument would be like, I don't know if they're still there or not, but when I was a kid and we'd go out to Forest Park, you'd walk on these trails, and there were like cars from the 70s and 60s that had just been abandoned in the middle of Forest Park, just like pushed into the forest a little bit and had been overgrown, and like obviously, probably they weren't, part of a massive manhunt for a 7-year-old boy, but they were left there on public land just to, kind of
rot.
To basically rot. So I, things like that have happened, but I think you're probably right that there was enough publicity surrounding this thing that, assuming they were on a road, because if they were off-roading in the middle of the desert to go hunting, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But
still, a lot of other people are going to cross that desert. 41 years, sooner or later, somebody's going to cross past.
No, I agree. You would think somebody would have found it, but enough time would pass. I bet you after 5 years, this is no longer in the public consciousness.
Oh, I'm sure, but
and so I come across some rusty old pickup truck and go, well, what a piece of junk, and I keep going.
Yeah, usually I shoot a few holes in it before I move on. But, well, so anyway,
You're the best, Joe.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, so to sum up all my reasons. Number one,
all of them.
The kid couldn't have been transmitting with the CB under the circumstances. I mean, or if he was, it wouldn't have reached more than 100 yards or so. Nobody ever found the wreck. No family member ever came forward and said, "Hey, my son and my husband are missing." I mean, none of that. Nobody. I mean, this guy, his father had to have had a job, right? When he failed to report to work the following Monday, do you think somebody would have maybe put 2 and 2 together, considering this has been all over the headlines? Yeah, it's just none of it makes any sense.
I guess in the 70s, I can see somebody not having a job and being a single father. And, I don't know what, I think that the 10th was a Friday that year. So they went missing on a Tuesday. Who takes their kid hunting on a Tuesday except for somebody who doesn't have a job? Yeah. If he's an unemployed single dad, they don't have any living family. It's happened before.
That is possible.
I mean, it's not likely, right? Yeah. But it's possible, I guess. I think with your one fell swoop of, oh yeah, by the way, the CB radio couldn't have been broadcasting, okay, I'm on your side. Yeah. But I am going to continue to say, I think there's a lot of likelihood around Larry's story. Whether or not,
and what was the Jane Doe something that you did the story on?
Yeah.
I can't remember
A lot of numbers. Jane Doe, lots of numbers.
lots of numbers.
Yeah.
Same thing with her. We all said, well, how come nobody reported her missing? Well, it could have been as simple as people went, oh, well, they moved. Oh, I guess they moved out of the house. There was a story I just read from the BBC of they found some woman in her flat dead. She had been there for 6.5 years.
Yeah.
Because her car was gone, and her neighbors just assumed that she had moved. Okay, this guy's red pickup with a camper is gone, and they just go, oh, I guess he moved. I've told you both about the neighbor I had who just randomly disappeared for a couple of months, and I thought, well, I guess that guy just moved until I found out what the story was.
Not dead, by the way.
Not dead.
listeners.
Very simple story. Just kind of took off for a while, was on Walkabout.
Yep.
But the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, I guess my neighbor moved out. Well, the landlord will do something about it when they do something about it, or the owner of the property, whoever, and maybe it takes a long time. They don't figure it out.
Well, and even, I mean, I guess not to like push this too hard, but even if he's not unemployed, he takes the day, right? But if he's a single parent and he's a delinquent, maybe he like doesn't show up, he's late a lot. His manager just assumes, oh, John decided to quit, didn't
Well-
show up, better fire him.
Oh, well.
Oh well.
Yeah, that's possible. Or his manager could, having just read the newspaper, could put two and two together and say, "Gee, I wonder if it's John's
Boy.
kid that's trapped in that pickup truck."
Yeah, that would
I mean,
take.
the kid doesn't show up for school, but maybe the school authorities will just say, "Oh, must have moved," you know.
Well,
And the guy
again-
stops paying his rent, so the landlord finally comes by and realizes there's nobody there, and he puts two and two together.
What a lot of people don't understand when we're doing this story, because I was looking at the clippings, because people have scanned them in. That New York Times bit that you read was probably one of the larger stories that,
It
that's
absolutely
out there.
was, yeah.
Most of them are about a paragraph and a half on page 97B.
Next to the obits.
Next to the obits. So it's very easy to get missed. It's not like today where we have, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, where there's social media cramming all of this in front of us. Instead, it's back there, and I might read it, and I might, work at the same place but not make the connection, but you're the manager, but you don't read it, so you don't make the connection, and I don't think to tell you anything because I'm busy doing my job, because we don't stand around and chit-chat and email these stories to each other.
And, I guess it was started and finished within what, like
Within a week.
8
Within a week,
days?
yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
But at the same time, it did get a lot of local play, because
It
don't
did.
forget, 150 volunteers showed up to comb.
It absolutely did.
So
So it's kind of
the word was out.
yeah. No, I think you're right. I think it's
Yeah.
there's good arguments on both sides. Yeah. Do you guys have? I mean, I know Joe's favorite theory is that Larry wasn't real.
Larry,
Steve, what do
Larry
you
was
think?
not
I was
real.
ambivalent at the start, but I also don't believe that Larry was real.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
It reminds me of that episode of The Simpsons.
What show, the best shows always end with, reminds me of an episode of The Simpsons.
Yeah. What
Please do
Futurama.
tell, sir.
Oh well, Bart gets his he gets a walkie-talkie set, so he lowers one of the walkie-talkies down this really, really deep well, and then he gets on the other one and he's like, "Oh, somebody help me!" And soon the whole town of Springfield, it's like, "Oh my God!" I forget what he calls himself. Maybe he called himself Larry, but he's like, he's got everybody all concerned and anyway.
You
so-
know what's funny
did you
is
see
I
that
think
one?
I've seen like 10 episodes of The Simpsons in my life,
Yeah.
and that is one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe they were sort of riffing on Larry in
Maybe
that
they were.
particular episode.
That's the genius of The Simpsons, right? Is that like they make references that are so
Obscure pop culture
That-
references.
that only a few people get them,
Years
and
later.
it's still good.
Yeah.
Still so good.
Yeah.
I guess.
So anyway, Larry,
On
if
that
I'm wrong, I apologize to your little desiccated skeleton somewhere out there in the
Oh.
desert, but I don't think I'm
Man.
wrong. Nah, Larry.
So many people hate you now.
Yeah, Larry's fine. Whoever was the voice of Larry is how
Living
old
in
is he now?
Fiji.
Yeah, he's middle-aged adult now, and maybe he's
Middle-aged?
Yeah.
Nah.
Well, he would have been born in, assuming he was actually 7, he would have been born in the mid-60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he'd be middle-aged.
What is middle age?
Middle-aged
classified
is
as?
like 30 to 60 or something like that.
Is it really? I never know. I always hear I'm middle aged. I never know what the classification is.
Anymore?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think middle aged is half the average lifespan.
Okay.
I
can
always
see
tend to
that.
think of it as around 50 or so.
Me
But then
too.
I was like at my doctor's years ago, and well, not that many years ago, I guess. But,
Decades
And he
ago.
said, I was like 33, and he says, well, you're a middle-aged white male. I go, what are you talking about?
33?
33?
What?
Apparently, that's the way doctors see it, is like 30 to 60 or something like
Crap.
that.
I better
Yeah.
start taking better care of myself. I'm going to be middle-aged soon.
Yeah, you are.
Crap. Well, I guess...
Now that we've solved the mystery, it's time for closing credits.
Yeah, it actually totally is. Pictures, there's no photographs of anything because obviously, like, we don't know where it was from. But a picture probably of this news snippet
Something.
we'll put up.
I,
but
uh,
also the links.
I did go out to the web, and there are lots of pictures of red and white pickup trucks.
That's
so,
fair.
Yeah, go out to the web, you'll find those.
Yeah, we'll put those on the website.
Yeah.
No, we won't. No,
Yeah.
we won't. But links to a couple links. There's not a whole lot of links around the internet.
No.
No, there really aren't.
And also, you may be listening on our website, thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. You can always find us on iTunes. If you do listen to us on iTunes, if you're not already subscribed and leave us a comment and a rating.
Wait, how does that tune go again?
Nope, you got it once.
Dang it.
You can loop it. You edit these shows.
I am so looping that now.
Man. I don't know.
Good
why I
Every
call.
episode.
Good call.
If you forget,
We're gonna get the Devin subscribe song.
Yeah.
That will not be in there, Joe.
mix them together. It's gonna
No,
be perfect.
no.
If
His
you
falsetto was terrible.
Yeah, I've got a beautiful falsetto.
if you forget to download us, you can always stream us straight from Stitcher on any mobile device. I
Except
guess.
for CB. Huh.
Except for a
But, yeah.
CB, they don't have any apps, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Although we may just broadcast the show on CB anyways. Just
No.
use our ham radio.
No.
That seems like too much work to you?
The only ham I have comes in plastic packages.
I'm a
It's not a radio
star.
kind.
Yeah, I don't have a
I'm
CB
the
either.
best. Somebody bring me some ham. No? Okay. You can find us on Facebook.
yeah.
You
Just
can
turned into a musical.
And like us. Don't forget to like us.
Yeah, you can either like us or
You can really
join
like
the
us.
fan page. I guess
Yeah.
that's the
The group.
terminology.
The group.
There's lots of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Actually, right now.
Good times.
And if you're Larry, or you heard Larry, or you just want to talk to us, send us an email. That email address, as always, as Steve would say, is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
I guess on that super awesome, upbeat, short note,
Yeah.
we're going to get out of here.
All right. Well, so long, everybody.
Breaker Niner. We'll talk to you next week.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, and Larry, give us a call.
Oh, my gosh.
Thinking Sideways is not brought to you by a transmitter positioned on the dark side of the moon. Instead, it's supported by the generous contributions of people like you, our listeners, on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Thinking Sideways to learn more.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply. What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey guys, welcome again to Thinking Sideways. I am, of course, Steve, joined as always by,
Joe.
Devin.
and this week we have yet another mystery. This week we're going to talk about what I would call a conspiracy theory, and that is the lost cosmonauts. This, of course, was a suggestion it was on Facebook by Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, Tom sent that in almost a year ago.
We've had other people.
Yeah, I think Tom was the first one that got recorded.
Yeah, so yeah, if
We
you're not
always
Tom, we
say,
apologize.
oh, yeah, I'll add you to the list, and then forget something.
Yeah, let's see.
But I know that we got a bunch of them on this one. So, the lost cosmonauts, also referred to as the phantom cosmonauts, is, as I said, I call it a conspiracy theory. I find it really interesting because there's so many claims and then the counterclaims, and it just turns into kind of a crazy big ball. I get why people are into it and can be a little weirded out by it because, put yourself in somebody's situation in space that isn't going to make it home. That's a creepy thought.
And actually, there actually are documented, incidents of people not making it home. So
Yes.
yeah.
But they are probably not the ones that we're going to talk about. So, to start with, I need to preface what we're going to go through because this story deals with information that comes out of the Soviet Union in the 50s and the 60s. We don't know how much of it is actually going to be true because they weren't very forthcoming.
No, they
They
weren't.
censored a lot of information.
Still aren't very forthcoming.
Yeah, and with the fall of the Soviet Union, people found and shared records, so we have information on a bunch of things.
Oh yeah, a lot of stuff's been cleared up.
But there are some things that we still don't know. So I don't know if people we're going to talk about, A, really existed or not, and B, if they really did die in a space program, and C, if they died on the ground or in the air. Just don't know. But we're going to talk about them nonetheless.
I think
that
there
never
were.
stops us.
I think there were a few people in the Soviet space program who died on the ground. But we had
quite a few.
astronauts who died on the ground too, though. So it's not unusual when you're playing with big, scary, dangerous toys like rockets and stuff.
Yeah. Science is not always bunnies and rabbits.
Not.
Bunnies and rabbits? No, it's what is the thing? I'm fairies and godmothers? I don't know.
Literally no idea what you're trying
Yeah, I
to
don't
say
know
right
what you're
now.
saying. Yeah.
All squishy and nice and fuzzy and safe. That's
Yeah.
what I'm going for.
Sugar and
sure.
spice and everything nice.
Yes. Thank you. See, this is why we have her. She's the smart one.
Because
Yeah.
I know what girls are made of? Yeah. You're right. That's why you have me around.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go through the story here. We've got a huge laundry list of supposed incidents that happened in the Soviet Union. So we've got a huge laundry list of people to get into. So we should probably start with the stories of all these different people. We're going to do this in sort of chronological order because that's the way I like to do it because I'm easily confused. First off, between the years 1957 and 1959, 3 cosmonauts are said to have been killed in individual attempts to reach space. So one each year, one in 57, one in 58, one in 59. And we don't know if that really happened or not because of the source, but according to the lore, these 3 people died in the Soviet space program trying to get to space.
Yeah.
The names of these people are, and I apologize, my Russian is not good. I'm going to do my very best with these. I've sounded them out a dozen times. Hooked on Phonics worked for me, so we're going to go for it. We have Alexei Lidovoskyk, Sergei Shaborin, and Andrei Mitkov.
I'd say that's pretty good.
Those are the 3 men. There is a report of potentially a 4th person that died in those years, and that is a woman by the name of Maria Gromov. But again, we have one source for this, and that is a quote-unquote high-ranking Czech communist who isn't identified. So
That sounds real reliable.
those are our first ones. Next up, we have 3 people in 1959, so this is a separate from the ones that I just talked about. In the year 1959, 3 different people killed in a botched attempt to get into space. Their names are Peter Dolgov, Ivan Kocher, and Alexei Gruchov. And then we're going to move forward. There's the whole laundry list. I told you guys. There's a bunch of names here. Write them down. There's going to be a quiz later.
Yeah, first
I've
you have
already
to figure out
forgotten
how to spell them.
Yeah, spell them. Spell them correctly. There's extra points.
Yeah.
No Googling them. We have our good friend Robert Heinlein. Yes, the author Robert Heinlein,
Yeah.
who says that on the 15th of May, 1960, while he was traveling through the Soviet Republic,
He was, I believe, in Lithuania. Is what I heard.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He said that he was told by soldiers that Soviets had put a man into space that day. Officials, of course, immediately denied this as soon as he went up to somebody who actually was of rank and file.
Right.
Oh, no, that didn't happen. Don't know what they're talking about. But he wrote about it, and he's shared that story, so we have it out there.
Yeah.
If what I just went through, these 7 people plus Heinlein, if that was all that there was to this story, it would have died on the vine years ago. There's not enough here to give it legs.
Yeah, there's some people who did give it legs. So.
Oh, yeah, and they're the brothers that we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
We've got a pair of Italian brothers, Ilya. Hopefully I pronounced their names right, but that's okay. These guys were in the late 1950s, and then through the 60s. I would say kind of your typical space nerds at the time.
Yeah, amateur radio nerds more like.
Yeah.
They got into that. They started out just being into radio because I think their mother scored a bunch of surplus military radio gear.
Well, and they
gave it to them.
cobbled everything that they ever had together. I mean, they had a real ramshackle setup, kind of made their antennas out of whatever they could. And they started listening to everything that was broadcast between the Soviets and the Americans in the space race.
Yeah, the Soviets actually publicized what frequency they were going to be communicating on.
They did.
But what's interesting about
Not all of their frequency, but some of it.
Yeah, they did. The Americans did too. Although what's interesting is their choice of frequencies is they're actually kind of crowded, a crowded band of the radio dial. So why they chose that, I don't know. Anyway,
I can't answer. I didn't research that part.
Yeah.
So the brothers, they've made quite a few claims of things that they picked up over the airwaves. And
I believe it wasn't just them. I think they had people, they had friends and
they had people helping,
and people showing up, and so it wasn't just them.
What was the name of their base that they called it? I can't remember. Well, they had a base of operations, and people would come and go and hang out and gather during known launches, and they would listen and they would record. Well, there's some very notable ones that they recorded, and I'm gonna go through this bullet point style, so I know Devin will like this.
Oh, yeah. You're right. Yeah.
May 1960, a manned spacecraft reports it's going off course. November 28, 1960, a faint SOS Morse code signal is sent from a spacecraft leaving Earth's orbit. And these guys say they confirmed that because they did the calculations to figure out that it was leaving our orbit and drifting away.
Yeah, well, apparently what it is the way they calculated the velocity of these objects that were
the velocity and altitude
is they would use the Doppler effect. So since these things in low Earth orbit are traveling pretty fast, they whip by a fast overhead, so you get the radio signal gets compressed when it's headed towards you, and as soon as it passes directly over you, then it starts stretching out again.
But they were self-taught. I mean, they figured this out.
Yeah, they did. They were clever.
So I would say that maybe their calculations weren't exactly perfect.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so they claim that since this SOS signal
was getting weaker.
Yeah, and since there was no Doppler effect, that's why they believe it was not zipping by across the skies overhead.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. February 1961, a cosmonaut this is audio, is recorded suffocating to death. And this is not something that we do often, but the audio is available on the internet, and we're going to use a little bit of it. So first, what we're going to hear is the breathing of this supposed cosmonaut. And now what we're going to listen to is the supposed heartbeat slowing down of said cosmonaut. April 1961, a capsule is recorded orbiting the Earth 3 times before re-entering the atmosphere. And if you are a fan of space history, you're going to note that's April 1961. This is several days before Yuri Gagarin's historic flight to be the first human in space.
Yeah, his was like, April 12th or April 19th?
12th.
It was 12th. Yeah.
It was the 12th. So the official date on this, I believe, they say is I've seen it different places. I've seen it 7th. I've seen it the 9th.
I thought it was like 5 days, so I think the 7th would be
Yeah,
right.
but it varies from place to place, as a lot of this information does.
Oh, yeah.
May 1961, an orbiting spacecraft makes an appeal for help before going out of control. And this spacecraft is supposedly piloted by a woman. And this audio is several minutes long, but we're only going to play about 15-20 seconds of it. October of 1961, a cosmonaut loses control of their spacecraft and it veers off into deep space.
Whoopsie.
November 1962, a space capsule misjudges its re-entry and bounces off the Earth's atmosphere and out into space.
God, can you do that? Is that an actual thing?
You can bounce off
According
the
to
atmosphere.
TV.
Yeah, it's like skipping a stone off the surface of the water. You can actually, if you come at it too shallow of an angle, you can bounce off the atmosphere.
But you got to be high up.
Great.
Yeah. Well, and
More
of course,
things to fear.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah. But so you can bounce off.
I didn't know that was possible, but now I'm scared of other things.
November of 1963, another female cosmonaut dies during re-entry. And 1964, April of that year, yet another cosmonaut is killed when their capsule burns up in the atmosphere upon re-entry. So that's a bunch of things that they are claiming that they have made recordings of. And we'll go into some of this in a little more depth later on, but I just want to keep moving forward with the story as the lost cosmonaut or phantom cosmonaut story goes. So we're going to move to another guy that you might have heard about if you've ever done any reading on this, and this is a gentleman by the name of Vladimir Ilyushin. I know, I gave you a bunch of information, and now I'm throwing us away. I know people hate it when I do that, but
Yeah,
it's
really, cut it
important,
out.
and this guy actually plays into that April 1961 date that we were just talking about, that 5 days before Gagarin,
Because everybody thinks it was him.
because everybody thinks it was him. And let's talk about Vladimir, because he was a test pilot in the military, and he had broken at least one, but I think several altitude records. And according to the lore, he loved that, the glory that it gave him, but he realized that these guys that were going into the space program were going to literally crush his records.
Yeah,
They were
sure.
going to destroy him. So somehow he